I'm going to go on and make my collar pattern so we can talk about a couple of things to do to the collar patterns. Before I do that, I need to correct that spot right there on my drape. So let me make a new line. Okay. The first thing I'll do is just draw my center back and pin that guy to it. I was also going to come up here just a little bit, wasn't I? There we are. Okay. I'll put pins in my other corners. And remembering that it's a straight line here at my back neck, I'll go on and just push pin there. So I just need to wheel my neckline curve and this outer style line. That's pretty straight. I want to make sure I mark the shoulder with an extra push pin. And there we are. So let's draw this all in here. Making sure that I'm a right angle at center back, both at the neck and at the style line. We'll see why that's important here in a minute. I can make that a straight line and go on and mark my notch. I only want to have a notch at the shoulder on my neckline edge. A lot of times folks get over anxious about notching and they'll put a notch on the outer style line edge too, where it's just folding down, touching the shoulder line. But you don't want to do that because it would not be sewing to the shoulder here. And also having this one notch at the shoulder helps us on the neckline know that this is the neckline edge. Because as you can see, the shape is not too different. You know, it wouldn't be too difficult to accidentally sew this part to the neckline. But hopefully with a shoulder notch there, that reminds you that this is the neckline. Okay, there is half of a collar without seam allowance. Grain line going that direction. So I need to add seam allowance and it should just get 1/4 of an inch all the way around. And then we could cut out a full collar. We'll fold it on center back precisely. Staple it and cut it out real quick. I got to keep my scissors flat. If I have them at an angle, I might remove too much from the under layer there. Okay, so there we are. Before I open it up, I'm going to notch it. I need notchers. And I can notch center back. If I come 1/8 of an inch away from the fold, I can do that and it'll be a double notch. And notice that I'm not shoving my notchers all the way in. I only want my notch to be about 1/8 deep. So I'm going halfway into this 1/4 of an inch seam allowance. You may or may not end up with a notch on the style line at center back. If I were to do that, I might put it right on the fold just to differentiate it from the neckline. And I can actually build my undercollar off of this as well. Our undercollar will have the exact same neckline shape, but it will be about 1/8 of an inch short from this one off of center back height, and that will just blend over here to our front edge. We do that so that the seam kind of rolls to the inside, and it also just accounts for the difference in length for the top collar being on the outside and the under collar will be on the inside. So let me make an under collar real quick. Maybe I can get it right there. Nope. I don't think I've got enough paper to do that. Will it fit if I go that away? Oh, yay. Okay. So I can trace it with the seam allowance. So then I'm saving myself time. I don't have to redo seam allowance on the under collar. There it is. Give it a grain line, under collar, and I'm going to remove 1/8 of an inch. Yeah. And we'll just blend it out. I don't take 1/8 off of this edge just because it makes it difficult to stitch in there. So that's a 1. Shoulder notch again. And another way that people often differentiate between an under collar and a top collar is that the under collar would only get a single notch at center back. It'll differ from company to company, so you just have to know what you're doing. Okay, let's open these guys up. I hadn't been square at the center. Let me show you. So there's square lines. If I'd been a little bit to the inside, you know, or whichever direction you go in, you end up with peaks or valleys, and you don't want to have angles at center back. You want it to just look very smooth across. So that's why we make sure that these are right angles. The under collar matches up to the top collar at the neckline, and here we see this little bit that we shaved off to help it just roll under. I don't need to draw in any seam allowances on this under collar. I don't need to continue them on the top collar piece. The only thing I might do is extend that grain line. It'll just help in placing it on the fabric to have a longer grain line. And the interfacing would be applied perhaps to the top collar if it's a lighter color fabric and you want to keep it opaque and not see seam lines. I usually default to putting the interfacing on the under collar. I do want that notch right there where they match up. So, see, on the under collar, you'll still know that this is the neckline because it has shoulder notches.